you a few questions as well, and I hope you all will engage with me. And so I just put together a very short PowerPoint just to kind of guide our discussion. So, with that in mind, starting here, I'd love to hear from you what you think the benefits are of having a diverse and inclusive board. Like what do you get out of that? So if a few people would just share some thoughts, come off mute, tell me, what do you think? Why is it important to you? Go ahead, Rachel.
So for my organization, it's a more diverse representation of our community, and that leads to more voices in the room, which leads to deeper programming and deeper understanding.
Great. All right. Wonderful. Who else?
In our organization, I'm at Longy School of Music. We have already a very diverse student body, and we have a very white old board. We no longer represent our faculty or our students, and so we know we have to change our board culture just to be relevant and just to be able to be with them.
Excellent. Excellent. Anyone else want to add any other reasons?
Yeah, this is Wenxi. I'm in the pharmaceutical research, and in my field, diversity really brings out different idea and different perspective, even with the same data, same problems. Every one of us sees it differently. So diversity for us is not just race, it's also the training differences, where you're coming from, how you were trained, a different company you're coming from.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Who else wants to share why it's
I'm
important?
Patty Nolan. I'm on a couple of small boards, and I've been on other boards in the past, including several represented here, like Cambridge School Volunteers, and I'm interested in understanding how it is that we can reach out to more represent the community. And I'm also on city council, and so I also wanted to understand how, in that role, whether there's anything to do to contribute to the conversation we have within the city about diversity within the city, and also the boards and commissions of the city. Even though we don't appoint them, it's top, front, and center for us to understand and make sure that we're working in a way that is truly inclusive.
Okay, great. Excellent. Excellent. So I'm hearing lots of things, right? I'm hearing that representation is important, and of course it is, right? Representation matters. How do we remain current? How do we make sure that the boards and leadership of our organizations reflect the participants or members of our groups? The piece that Wenxi mentioned about diversity and what we bring to the table is really important as well. They've done mathematical studies. Scott Page at the University of Michigan did mathematical studies that proved that diverse teams come up with more creative and effective solutions to complex problems. So, thinking about when you're discussing something that's difficult, it is really great to have different voices, different backgrounds in the room. Right. So that, because we don't frankly know what we're missing when we don't have all voices in the room. So of course, that's a strong reason. It's kind of interesting. McKinsey did studies for for-profit companies showing that that having diversity in leadership made a difference to the bottom line. And I was looking at that and I thought to myself, well, I wonder what difference would that make for a nonprofit? Well, it seems to me that if you have a more diverse board and you then therefore broaden your reach, who are you going to for funding? Whether it's individuals, whether it's foundations, you have more diversity on your board, you're going to have better connections, better networks. All of that makes a difference, right? And then, of course, it is 2021, and way past time, right? That we should be able to recognize that talent shows up in different shapes and sizes, right? People with different abilities, and it's just the right thing to do. So I want to talk to now think about, and I don't doubt that all of you already believe this. So I know I don't need to spend a lot of time on talking about why this is important, because you wouldn't be here if you didn't think it was important. And I suspect that many of you are just having trouble, right, finding people to serve on your boards. So what is it that gets in the way? What are the obstacles?
I'll chime in. If you don't have a diverse board currently. It's tough to rely on your own board connections because you're already getting exposure to that population.
Absolutely. So most of us tend to have professional and personal circles where with people who look a lot like us,
Yep.
right? We're still a pretty segregated society. And so we tend to refer people who we share affinity with. And so then that makes it tougher. I also want to add that I think this whole idea of being the first is kind of a little passe. People aren't as excited about that anymore, being the first or being the only, whatever it may be. Right? That can be kind of tough too. So thank you, Jamie. What else is making it hard for you?
I think also fear of overburdening populations that are already bearing too much of the burden for this problem. So there's a little fear of connecting and asking for a favor.
Right, right. So you know what?
I'm sorry, just the end of my thought was like, we have to be sure that we're providing something that person needs and wants, not just that we want.
Right, so that it's a win-win. Yeah, it is kind of interesting, right? And I just made a note to myself that when we get to the what can you do, that this is one idea that I didn't include on my slide, which I should. I think people tend to go for the same people, right? The people that you've heard about. I mean, not everybody can get Mo Cowan on their board, right? Because I mean, he wouldn't have time, right? But everybody knows who he is. Everybody's heard of him. He's well known. So can we get comfortable looking for talent with people who may not be well known yet, but who are the future stars? Maybe younger people, right? How can we think about that? Okay, so thanks for that one, Lori. What else is getting in the way for you?
I want to oh, go ahead.
Just a quick note. I hesitate to reach out to someone and frankly kind of imply that we're only reaching out because they're a member of an underrepresented population.
It's awkward.
It's hard to otherwise make the connection if there's no other link to the person. If there's no personal or professional connection.
Yes,
it's hard to
that is something I do want for us to talk about when we get to what we can do, because I think we need to be mindful of our approach. Absolutely, good one. Thank you. Who was it who was trying to get in a while ago too at the same time?
I was just starting. It's again coming back to the obstacle of our limited communities. And it's very hard to just even know how to broaden your own communities. And this is actually one of an opportunity to do that, but how do you go beyond that? And a lot of our board members literally don't know how to do that. And how do we change ourselves to expand our universe of connections?
Right. Okay, good.
I work for the Takeda Pharmaceutical Company in Cambridge. Recently, our company has started this training employee who are interested to serve on the board. So I think that education is very important, and there are people who are willing but just don't know what is needed from them to serve on the board and what is the function. How can you become an effective member there? So I think for those already had greater experience, it would be great if these people can gather in and provide, basically nurture the younger generation or people who have interest would like to serve, have some way of learning about what board is all about.
Right, excellent. I do recall a few years ago, the Boston Foundation, I'm pretty sure it was them, they had a whole board training initiative, and they were particularly focused on people from underrepresented groups. And I'm not sure if that's still going, and they may have done it in connection with the partnership as well. But as we talk about, we're going to talk about one of the things you can do is broaden your networks. That is one thing certainly for us to think about.
And Marguerite, I agree with everything that's been said. Another factor is COVID. That as crazy as everyone's lives are, to ask somebody to take on a new obligation, are you crazy?
So this year, there's that
Right.
added piece, that added challenge. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, well, I'm not going to bother bring the PowerPoint back up, but the next slide, I was going to say a few things that I think get in the way are unconscious bias, professional and personal networks, and absence of a plan. So, just talking about unconscious bias first for a quick second. I mean, we all come by this honestly, right? And we need to become more aware of our biases and notice what assumptions we are making about people. So that is one thing I think that gets in the way. Someone else had also mentioned the networks, right? And so since we're kind of in a little circle with our own folks, what are we missing? And then the last piece is the plan. And when I bring up my slides to talk to you about the things that we can do, I'm going to focus a lot on what YW Boston does, because that's the nonprofit that I am most familiar with. And we are thinking about this all the time. So we are very intentional about it. Our board is very diverse, but we, even today, we had an executive board meeting this morning, and one of the topics, it's almost always on the agenda, is, you know, who are we missing? What are we looking for right now? Right. And we do it. And we just brought in a new class of members. They just started. Their first board meeting will be, well, no, it was December. But we're always kind of looking. So let me bring up my PowerPoint to share with you. Okay, so we've gone through the benefits, we've gone through what gets in the way. These are a few of the things that I think get in the way. And so now let's start talking about some things that you can do. And please feel free to chime in. You know, let's keep this as a conversation. I think, you know, we all have expertise to share in this context. So starting with the unconscious bias, watch out for your own biases. So think for yourself, what assumptions are you making? Whether it's based on somebody's race, their appearance, socioeconomic status, even things like accent or the sound of their voice. There's certain things that for all of us kind of operate as triggers. And they either make us think well of someone or think ill of someone, right? It's not that dissimilar actually to hiring. So if you think about it in the hiring space, studies have shown that we tend to make up our minds within about 90 seconds of meeting somebody, meeting a candidate that we're talking with. 90 seconds. Now, that's a crazy short amount of time. And less than 30% of the decision making in our head is based on what that person has said. Most of it is based on what they look like. So physical appearance and what they're wearing, the tone or quality of their voice, and things like their handshake. Do we think the handshake is too strong, strong enough, too weak, all of that? So I would encourage you to think for yourself, are there certain things that are triggers for you that either cause you to think positively or negatively about somebody? And, you know, with regard to things like boards, and I think one issue, frankly, is whether or not you think someone can raise money for your board. And it's not an illegitimate concern, because of course, you know, we do need to raise money for our organizations, but are you making assumptions about who can and who can't? And does race play into that, for example? Like if many of your boards have traditionally had people who are white on it, is it possible that race is a trigger for you in a negative sense? Or frankly, if you think you're making a guess maybe about somebody's socioeconomic status, even if someone doesn't have a lot of money, that doesn't mean they can't raise a lot of money. Doesn't mean they don't have connections. Doesn't mean that they won't go out there and, you know, and raise it for you. So at YW Boston, we require all board members to contribute. We have a recommended amount, but it's not a required amount, and it can be a give or a get. So we have some people on the board who are young and it might be difficult. They're not at a point in their careers where it would be easy for them to make the give totally on their own. And they get out there and they get it. And that's fantastic. Because guess what? It means that they're not just giving the money, but they're also bringing other people, new supporters into the fold, which is really great. So I'd encourage you to think about that. I mean, are you rigid or are you flexible? How flexible are you? Maybe is a better way of saying it, with regard to the financial commitment piece on your boards. One way, it is hard to figure out right? If you have an unconscious bias or what it may be. So one way to do it is to take this test called the implicit association test. Some of you may have taken it already. Professor Mazrin Banaji is at Harvard. She's one of the founders of this test. And there are probably 15 or to 18 different tests that you can take at this point. And you just need 20 minutes of uninterrupted time and access to the internet to do it. And it shows the difference between your explicit beliefs and your implicit beliefs. And I would encourage you to check it out, because if you find out that you've got a preference for one group versus another, that'll give you information. And then you can make an effort to mitigate for your biases. And, I'm just going to guess that most of you, because you're in Cambridge, the People's Republic, you're here in Massachusetts, that you're pretty liberal people. But here's the thing that I've found in working with liberal people, including myself, it's harder for us to admit that we might have some biases. So you got to make the effort to kind of learn and check it out. Another way to notice is to notice when you find yourself being surprised when somebody tells you something. It probably means that you had made some stuff up about them. So another thing I'm going to encourage you to do is check out this TED Talk if you haven't seen it. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is a Nigerian author. She's written Americana, Warmth of a Yellow Sun, fantastic. And she talks about this danger of writing a single story about somebody. So I would encourage you to check it out. It's a favorite of mine. So she talks about how she's fallen into this trap and how people have made up stories about her as well. All right, so that's the unconscious bias piece. So we started talking earlier about broadening your professional and personal networks. Now, that's not the easiest thing to do. And people often say, well, what does that mean? How do I do it? I would say just get out there and try to get yourself into some places where you're not normally. I mean, it could be that you join a professional association, or that even if you feel like you can't join it, you go to their events. I'm a lawyer, right? And we have lots of different bar associations for different groups. No, I don't have to be a member, or I don't have to be Asian to go to the Asian Bar Association or the LGBTQ Bar Association's events. So you could think about doing things like that. Even going to local fairs. I mean, COVID, once again, of course, is going to make this a little bit difficult, except actually in another way, it makes it kind of easier. You don't have to leave your house in order to attend an event. So look for opportunities to network, look for opportunities to get out there. And then I really want to hit the be intentional part. So the first thing is you want to be able to get comfortable having these conversations with members of your board, with members of your staff. So discuss it openly, right? What are we looking for? Who are we looking for? At YW Boston, we maintain a spreadsheet. So we've got a spreadsheet that's got the names of everybody who's currently on the board. And then it has all sorts of identities and characteristics about each one of us. So I think it starts with what our profession is, where we work, but then we also have race, gender. I don't know if we have sexual orientation. I should have looked before I said that, but a bunch of different things, even including like other professional connections. There's a section that's kind of open for just additional comments. It's got skill sets. It's a pretty big spreadsheet. And we look at it, and pretty much the governance committee looks at it all the time. And maybe every other board meeting or so, we might mention it at a board meeting. It looks like this year we're going to have maybe 2 openings. We notice that we need somebody maybe with strategy, or we think we've got a lot of people already who are in the DEI space, or we're going to have a man roll off the board, which means we're only going to have one man. Maybe we should get another man. So we have all of these kinds of conversations. We have them openly. We encourage people to think about who's in their network, who do they think might be interested, who's interested in our mission, believes in our mission, and might want to move forward. So I would encourage you to have that frank conversation, and have it frequently. And don't wait until it's only a month or 2 before it's time to have people to invite new board members. Now, then be mindful of your approach. So this gets to, I can't remember who raised the concern about how do you ask. So you're thinking to yourself, you're looking at your board and you're thinking, oh my God, we don't have anybody who's Asian or anybody who's Black. I've got to go find somebody. How do you do it? Now, I completely appreciate that it would feel awkward, and I really would say, don't go to someone and say the only reason we want you is because of your race, your gender, your sexual orientation. That's really awkward. There've got to be multiple reasons. So a couple years ago, we realized we had no one who was Latino or Latina on our board. I believe we got the feedback from a foundation that they noticed that we didn't. And so we started thinking about it, and we thought, all right, what else do we need? Let's think about what other skill sets, because you don't want to go to somebody for that one thing. And so I would say, think about what else you like about that person and lead with that. Actually, one of the people, we now have two people who are Latinx on our board, and one of them I approached, and he actually said to me, why do you want me to be on the board? And so I was kind of frank with him. I said, listen, no, I knew him. I'd worked with him over the years. He's been active in the DEI space for a long time. And so I led with that. And I said, I've seen that you have a demonstrated commitment. And then I said, look, I'm also going to be honest. You're bringing some diversity for us too, right? You're a man. We don't have many men on the board, and you're Latino. And so, but it was all together. And I led with other skills first. And I also know him. So that helped, right? I think if somebody who I didn't know approached me and said to me, we'd love you to serve on our board because you're Black and we don't have any Black people, that's going to be a short conversation, very short conversation. So be mindful of your approach. And then I have just one more slide I want to just talk to you about is think about the inclusion part too, okay? Because diversity isn't enough. If you just focus on bringing in a diverse group of people and you don't pay attention to the environment, to the atmosphere on your board, to making sure that you are welcoming, people are not likely to stick around, or they're not going to give you their best. So the board should make sure that the board is engaging. I wouldn't like lead with your push to find people without also attending to your personal awareness and the work that you do together as a board. I'm not saying you have to wait, but at least do it simultaneously, right? So individuals on the board should be attending to their personal work. The board could do some workshops together to make sure that you're thinking about these issues, that you're comfortable talking about race, gender, sexual orientation. At YW, we make sure that when new board members come in, all new board members, they get a mentor. So kind of like a board buddy. Recently this year, we decided it would be the newest board members. So last year's new board members, because they're going to be thinking about the things that concern them at the time. And we just asked them to connect with the new board members before each meeting and, see if they need anything, things like that. Organize opportunities for board members to get together, to get to know each other. You can even do that virtually on Zoom. We're doing ours tomorrow night. Actually, we have a little social planned. And there's the people who are planning it, they just sent it to us today. Actually, we've got a little cultural bingo for us to play. We'll see how that goes, right? But just to get to know each other, make sure everybody gets a chance to participate in meetings. Watch out for your introverts. Don't let the extroverts just dominate. And don't ask people to represent their whole group. I think when people ask me, what do Black people think? The best I can do is talk about what I think. So, we've got to get to a place where we're making sure that we're treating people as individuals while still respecting and understanding culture and group identity. But I know our time is drawing to a close, so I'm going to be quiet now and see if there are any questions, anything you want to follow up on, any other thoughts that anyone has on ideas, things that we could do. You'd love to see the cultural bingo, okay?
If I could just chime in with one thing, which is sort of it's not just about getting various people on your board. It's really about making it work and making their contributions real, which means changing the culture of your board, making it welcoming and inclusive. Well, for one thing, they're not going to stay if that is not the case, but I think we just have to be very mindful that we don't just flip a switch and start adding people and expecting everything to be hunky-dory. We need to sort of almost literally change the language we speak and the way we conduct business.
Absolutely. And that really is just about being mindful and to make sure that you get more comfortable yourself. right? I mean, if diversity on your board is new to you and you don't have a lot of experience mixing it up with people from different backgrounds, then you need to work on your stuff, right? So that you can then create more inclusion on the board. You know, a lot of it's about practice and comfort. Yes, Natalie.
First, I just want to say thank you. This has been really helpful. A question for you in thinking about, we are trying to be much more strategic and have a plan about what we are looking for in new members. Do you have any advice about kind of how to think about kind of what that diverse makeup should be? So should we be looking to our town and saying, this is the makeup of our community, therefore it would be ideal to have 30%, you know, Black, African-American, 20% Latina. You know, we're trying to kind of balance that when we think about what do we need, how do we know what do we need?
What do you need? Oh, that's interesting.
On that.
Yeah, you know, I guess I've talked to people in different organizations who have done that. I'm not sure we do that at RYW in terms of, I think we kind of look at the people in the room, but that certainly is one way to do it. I would encourage you not to get too rigid, right? Because that's going to feel kind of weird too. But I have to give really a lot of credit to Beth Chandler, our CEO, because she really has I've only been on the board for the last 3 years, and I feel as if she has really paid attention to it in a way that it wasn't before. In fact, we had a little celebration to say goodbye to our former board chair and to thank her. And some former board members came, and a couple of them came up to us and said, oh my God, are all of you on the board? Because it turned out, even though we're YW Boston, we didn't have many Black women on the board. And now we do. So actually now, for I think the first time in our history, we have more people of color on the board than white people. So, you know, but that's all been really intentional. Yeah. But, you know, you're our sister organization. I'm sure do you know some people at YW Boston? Because I'm sure we'd be happy to talk to you about.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so funny. We're probably, you know, just kind of, or maybe not just, but
across the river
in this process. But as I'm hearing this, I'm feeling good that we are thinking about all the same things. It's just the kind of how exactly to execute it in the right way is, this has been very helpful for that.
Oh, good. All right. So a couple people have asked about this bingo. So you know what? It looks as if at the top of it, it says HFLW Workforce Learning and Development. Maybe that's who created it. Yeah, that's what it says. But, you know, it's got little questions about who does what. And I don't know how they're going to do it on Zoom yet. I'm curious to see, because I think it's typically done in person and people fill out the bingo card. Any final thoughts or comments? I think we're about to Zoom back.
Thank you very much.
I guess the very last thing I'll say is you're about to go pitch people, right? You're about to go meet people. So remember, even if you don't get that person, they might tell someone else about you. So you're really, you know, you're selling yourselves. You're selling your organizations as well. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. Want to try and make the most of our short amount of time here. I'm going to be our facilitator, and basically my role here is just to keep time and keep things going. So without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Cambridge Local First to talk about your organization and the different opportunities on your board.
Fantastic. So I'm pinch hitting tonight for Theodora Skiatis, who's our executive director. My name is Andrew Levine, and I'm one of our board members for Cambridge Local First. And I'm really excited